Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. My name's Radha, and I'm here with our regular family of seekers. We're reading through the Bhagavad Gita verse by verse. And today we are in chapter 10. We are in this final section of chapter 10, which is a long section. It's like half of the section. And it's a really beautiful chapter, because in this chapter, Krishna's really it's called vibhuti. He reveals his opulences. Vibhuti means like his special manifestations. Okay, so at the beginning of the chapter, in the first seven or so verses, Krishna explains that no one fully understands him. Hey, not even the great sages or celestial beings. He says he's the source of everything, and everything that exists ultimately comes from him. Okay, so he's infinite and everything else is finite. So how could anything understand him? We talked about that quite a bit. And then we got to these what we call the nutshell verses of the Gita, verses 8 through 11. And these verses are like four of the most important verses of the Gita. They really summarize the heart of the Gita. And in these verses, Krishna explains that he can only truly be understood through bhakti, through devotion. Not just through intellectual study or speculation, but through a relationship with him. That's what the process of bhakti gives us, access to this relationship with him. And ultimately by his grace, because we endeavor, he sees our endeavor, and he showers his mercy on us in bringing us closer to him. This is the process of bhakti. So then in verses 12 through 19, this is where Arjuna, after having heard, the essence of the Gita from Krishna, right? From Krishna, these nutshell verses, and Arjuna fully accepts Krishna's position. He acknowledges Krishna's greatness, and then he asks Krishna, oh, Aaron just joined. Hi, Aaron. Happy you made it. Sorry. So then he acknowledges Krishna's greatness, and then he asks Krishna to explain more about his glories. Arjuna basically says, how can I remember you throughout the day? How can I see you in the world around me? And Krishna's answer becomes the rest of the chapter. So this chapter just has it's four main sections. And we're in the last one that's going to go on for 20 verses. From verses 19 to 42, Krishna's describing these vibhutis, these special manifestations. And we talked about this a little bit in the last time. Vibhuti, it basically means like the most outstanding example within a group. The most powerful, the most beautiful, the most remarkable. So what happens in these verses is Krishna starts pointing. Kelly, good morning, Kelly. Krishna starts pointing to different things in the world, great mountains, powerful leaders, sacred sounds, forces of nature, and he says, among all these things, I am that. And this is super practical. For us, we may not relate to every example that we hear, but we can understand what he's doing here. We can understand what he's doing here, and that is that he's using the one among the many to help us remember the one above the many. So all these remarkable things that we see around us become reminders of the ultimate source of everything. And so that's just to kind of frame up to where we're going, so that even if we don't necessarily relate or even know what some of these things are, we can understand the principle here. That is of saying of all the mountains, I am that which is the biggest, most powerful. And he's going to go through like every group and show us that. So it's really beautiful. So before we get into the verses, Shakti, do you want to say our prayers for us?
Sorry. Yes, I would be honored. Om Agyana Timirandasya Yananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shtapitam yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kara Mayam Dandati Sva Pandatikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savarhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakans Vitam Cha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kancha Garungi Radhe Vrindavaneshvari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Prananami Hari Priye Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavembhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Guru Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Yeah, thank you. All right, let's start with, let's see, what verse are we starting with today? We are starting with verse 22. So chapter 10, text 22 is where we are starting. And whenever you're ready, Stella.
Vedanam sama vedosmi, devanam asmi vasaha, indriyanam manas kasmi, bhutana nam asmi chetana. Of the Vedas, I am the Sama Veda. Of the demigods, I am Indra, the king of heaven. Of the senses, I am the mind. And in living beings, I am the living force, consciousness.
Thank you. So I'll just go through each of these so that we understand it a little bit better so that we can understand the context. But again, some of these things we may not really even know what they are, and that's okay as long as we understand the principle. And in that, hopefully we can kind of start to even see it in our own lives. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit at the end. Some of our own examples of how this maybe we can kind of parallel what Krishna's doing here, but in ways that are more relevant in our lives. Okay, so first he says of the Vedas, I am the Sama Veda. Okay, so the different Vedas each serve different purposes, but the Sama Veda is especially known for its musical quality. Okay, so much of the sacred chanting comes from it. So again, Krishna is pointing to something especially beautiful and elevating and devotional here, and saying, of the Vedas, I am the Sama Veda. And then he says, among the demigods, I am Indra, because Indra is understood to be the king of heaven, the most powerful among those celestial administrators. So same principle here. Krishna's highlighting, when we see great power or leadership, that strength ultimately comes from the supreme source. And then he says, of the senses, I am the mind. And, normally we think of the senses as our eyes, our ears, our nose, our tongue, touch. But all of these senses are actually centered in the mind. The mind processes everything that we experience. And the mind's incredibly powerful. We all know that. Like the mind can take the same situation and turn it into heaven or turn it into hell. People can have the exact same experience, and one person feels grateful and peaceful, while another just feels completely miserable. We've all experienced that. So the difference is the state of the mind. And this power is remarkable. And Krishna's point isn't, that we worship the mind. It's just that we see this extraordinary power of the mind itself as a small reflection of this divine intelligence. When we see how powerful the mind is, how it can shape our perception of reality, we can begin to appreciate how great the source behind it must be. Like for as incredible as AI is, which is pretty incredible, it's still not, it's not, a human mind. Like nothing has ever been able to really duplicate that 100%. So it's like uh, we can have such appreciation for the great source behind it. And then Krishna says, among all living beings, I am consciousness. Okay, so consciousness is what makes something alive. A body without consciousness is just matter. But when consciousness is present, suddenly there's awareness, there's experience, personality, relationship. So consciousness is what makes life life. This is what AI is lacking. Consciousness is what makes life life. It's what allows us to think, to feel, to connect, to love, to grow. And when you think about it, like even what makes a person truly attractive isn't just their appearance, it's their aliveness, their awareness, their personality, their energy, their presence. Okay, so all this comes from consciousness. So Krishna says, I am that consciousness. So again, just bringing us back to the same insight. Whenever we see something remarkable in this world, power, beauty, intelligence, vitality, understand that these are just like small sparks pointing us back to the ultimate source. They're meant to help lift our vision from the world towards the one who's behind it all. That's what we should see when we see these really impressive things around us, or really impressive people around us, landscape around us, all of it. We're going to go through so many different examples, and then hopefully we can come up with some of our own too. Right? So when we see something like this, it just points us back to Krishna. And this is called vibhuti yoga because it's a way that we connect back to source, back to God. Now we'll move to 23. 1023.
Rudranam Sankaraskasmi Vitesho Yaksha Rakshasam Basunam Pavakaskasmi Meru Sikharinam Aham. Of all the Rudras, I am Lord Shiva. Of the Yakshas and Rakshasas, I am the Lord of Wealth, Kuvera. Of the Vasus, I am fire, Agni. And of mountains, I am Meru.
Thank you. Same pattern here. First, he's saying, of the Rudras, I am Lord Shiva. Okay, so according to Vedic texts, the Rudras are just like powerful divine personalities connected with transformation and destruction. There's several of them. That among them, the most prominent and powerful is Lord Shiva. So he's saying, among the Rudras, I am Lord Shiva. Among a group of really powerful beings, the most extraordinary one represents my glory. That's what he's saying here. And then he says, among the yakshas and rakshasas, I am Kuvera. These beings are described as powerful beings within the universe, but many of them they're a little bit more like rajasic and tamasic. They have strong material desires. They're a little overcome with the modes. But among them, Kuvera stands out. Okay, he's known as the Lord of Wealth, and he's a guardian of great treasure. So even in a group that may not always be so spiritually elevated, Krishna points to the best among them, the one who stands out, and says this is my glory. Okay? And then Krishna says, among the Vasus, I am fire. So the Vasus these are just different Vedic terms. Again, not so important that we understand, but I'm just going over it so that we can understand and appreciate the context of the verses a little bit more. So the Vasus are associated with these natural forces in the universe, and among them, fire has always been considered especially powerful and sacred. Fire gives warmth, fire gives light, fire transforms whatever it touches. Across different cultures, fire's always been seen as something mystical, something that sustains life and commands respect. You know? So Krishna's saying this powerful energy we see in fire is another small reflection of my divine energy. And then he says, of mountains, I am Meru. So in Vedic cosmology, Mount Meru it's described as the greatest and the most majestic of mountains. It's like the central towering mountain of the universe. Same idea here. When we see something vast, stable, awe-inspiring, like a great mountain, we're seeing just a glimpse of the greatness of the source behind everything. So these great personalities, these natural forces, these majestic landscapes, all these remarkable things, instead of becoming absorbed only in those things themselves, Krishna invites us to see them as reflections of a greater source. Okay, they're like sparks of a much greater fire. And when we start seeing the world this way, our attraction slowly shifts from the individual sparks to the source of them all. And this is where Krishna's really trying to get us to. This is why he spends 20 verses. It's trying to get us there so that when we're moving about our days, you go on vacation, you see the beautiful ocean, or you go to a national park and you're just like standing at the most majestic waterfall or mountain, or you're reminded of Krishna. In your heart of hearts, you're not thinking, oh, how can I enjoy this most? You're thinking, wow, Krishna is incredible. These things connect us back to Krishna. And this is called evolution of consciousness. When we go from seeing these beautiful, attractive things, when we go from the mindset of, oh, how can I enjoy the most, to the mindset of, wow, Krishna is remarkable. Krishna is remarkable. Source behind all of this. This is Krishna's glory. We see Krishna in it. And what happens is that mindset, that level of consciousness is what actually fills our hearts. We all know this enjoyer mentality doesn't really fill our hearts. Like for a temporary blip of time, we may get some high, but our heart is not really full. So this is what Krishna is trying to transform inside of us. Kind of shift our hearts, kind of shift our perspectives, kind of expand our consciousness. I'm taking a group to Costa Rica next week. A couple of you on this call are coming to Costa Rica. And this is what I love about these kinds of retreats. We go to these beautiful places and we do things, we're going on a waterfall hike, we're going to see a volcano. But what we're trying to do around even these experiences is bring in God. Right? So oftentimes we go to these places and we just want to enjoy for ourselves. And vacation becomes about, how can I get the most, how can I just squeeze out the greatest amount of pleasure for myself? But what we're trying to do with this particular trip and trips of this flavor are, we go to a volcano, we glorify God, we have kirtan. We're in one of the most beautiful places, but in that we connect it back to God. And what happens is that people are filled with something much greater than like just a typical vacation, just a typical me, vacation. They're connected to source through some of these incredible landscapes in God's creation. And people experience that firsthand, how full that makes their hearts. So it's like a next level kind of vacation that we're doing. A lot of the same things, but the focus is different. And it's that focus that shifts the consciousness and that really makes all of the difference. Does anybody have anything to share before we move on? We just keep going through these.
Just quickly, I feel like once you start going on spiritual vacations, you're just hooked. and it's great. So just want to share.
Yes. Katie, I met
And
Katie on the first retreat actually that I did.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for the people who first invited me to my first one, and yeah, so
Yeah.
if you get the chance, I'd say do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it really changes the way you see vacation. I feel
Yeah.
like after doing that, it's hard for me to just go on a vacation with my family and actually enjoy it because it just feels like stale. Like the amount of pleasure that we can extract from life without Krishna. Not that when I go on vacation with my family, it's life without Krishna, but it's not so bhakti focused. We're not going to
Mm.
places to have kirtan. We're not going to a waterfall to have meditation. We're not waking up early every morning, 10 of us together chanting. It's just like a whole different, when you're really just immersed in that kind of spiritual bubble with spiritual
Mm.
association, it just
It's really
changes everything.
it's really special. Yeah.
Yeah, it is really special. And you can still, enjoy your coffee at the sunrise. You still do you just still do some things that do are fun and relaxing and vacation like, but you add Krishna in and it's euphoric. Shakti.
Um, I too met you on pilgrimage in India, in Mumbai. Well, before that, but really conversated in Mumbai. And it's so true that it's not that it's like everything has to be chanting, everything has to be like because some people think, oh my gosh, it's a bhakti, everything's going to be no. It's just we all remember that God is at the center, right? So we see a waterfall and we think, wow, Krishna, look what he has done. Wow, this is so beautiful. And we don't even have to say it. It's just a way of being, and that's what's great because when you're going with people that know you, that you don't know what they're thinking, but you have an idea because of just of who they are and their friendship to you. And it's just it sort of takes like you're away and that's great, but it takes it from like here to like here
Mm,
because you're really connecting with Krishna in a sense, in a way that it's hard to do if you're at home and you're working full time, going on. The vacation allows you to really connect to Krishna in those ways that I don't know, for me, that I yearn for
mm,
and can't always do when I'm running here, running there, doing this, doing that. And so it's really beautiful. And I know you know, has a lot of things coming down the pipe. And I would just say, like, if you can, even if one is what you can afford, like, do your best to try and get to one because it can have a big change. It can make a big change in your life.
mm.
So that's my two
Yeah,
cents.
yeah. Thank you, Shakti. Just being in that container, like what you said, with other like-minded souls, that container creates the space, and then automatically everybody's consciousness is transformed. It's magical. It's Krishna's glory. It's magical. Thank you. Okay, shall we move to the next one? 24.
Purdasham cha mukyamam vidiparta brihaspatim senamin inam aham san skandaha sarasam asmi sagaraha. Of priests, O Arjuna, know me to be the chief, Brihaspati. Of generals, I am Kartikeya. And of bodies of water, I am the ocean.
Thank you. So, okay, let's see. Among priests, I am Brahaspati. So there's many priests in Vedic tradition, but Brahaspati is known as the chief priest of the gods. So he's especially respected, for his wisdom, his guidance, his spiritual knowledge. So Krishna's pointing to the most respected and learned among them and saying that excellence, that wisdom reflects my presence. So when we see someone who has deep wisdom, who guides others spiritually, it can remind us of the source of all wisdom. And that's the reality. That's the reality. It's just a spark of Krishna's splendor. And then Krishna says, among generals, I am Kartikeya. So Kartikeya is known as the commander of the celestial armies, the leader of the forces that protect order in the universe. So he's described as just powerful, courageous, formidable. It's the same thing here. When we see extraordinary leadership, strength, bravery, that excellence ultimately comes from the divine source. And if we can all think about that, someone who is an extraordinary leader, super strong or brave, or we can think of them and have quite an appreciation in our hearts. But let's think of them and think, wow, that extraordinary capability, extraordinary special manifestation came directly from God. When we think that, then we feel close to God, right? Like, wow, that's really extraordinary. And then there's something sweet about that, it just brings us into relationship with God. This is this particular kind of yoga, vibhuti yoga. It's really amazing. Amazing because we can practice it so easily through our lives, everything that we're doing. We come across these things all day long. We go to work, we work with that person who's just really extraordinary in what they do. And we have such an appreciation for them, or our spouse, or the landscape of where we live, whatever it be. You walk outside the sunshine, whatever it is. So often, whatever we're feeling appreciation for in this world, the next step, our first thought should be, wow, I'm so grateful for the sun just shining on my face. And then our next thought should be, that's Krishna. That's Krishna. And that's where he goes next. Among the bodies of water, I am the ocean. Think about how we naturally react when we stand in front of the ocean. It's vast, it's powerful, it stretches as far as the eye can see. There's something about the ocean that just naturally fills us with awe. Same thing. We just so we feel that, we experience that. Our next thought, this is Krishna. It's so sweet, right? It's simple, but it's sweet and it works. But when our next thought is, oh, this is Krishna, we just feel held, right? We just feel sheltered. Right? We feel in relationship with. And this is Krishna's mercy he's giving us. When we encounter something in the world that feels vast, majestic, overwhelming in its beauty, like the ocean, we're getting a small glimpse of the greatness of the source behind everything. I think of Glacier National Park. Has anybody been to Glacier National Park? My husband and I just love national parks. We try to go to one every year. And this particular park is like my favorite so far. It's a next level place. It is so majestic. Everything. It has like those beautiful turquoise lakes, and so even if you're not on a quote unquote spiritual vacation, that's like planned and that's like that. Maybe you go to a national park with your family, you could still practice this. You see that turquoise lake and you think, wow, this is Krishna. It's really quite unbelievable. So all these things, wisdom, strength, leadership, vastness of nature, small reflections of the unlimited greatness of divinity. and they're sparks pointing back to the source. Okay, 25. Whenever you're ready, Stella.
Mahashinam Burgur Aham Giram Asmi Ikam Aksaram Yagnanam Japa Kyadnosmi Stavaram Himalaya. Of the great sages, I am Brigu. Of vibrations, I am the transcendental Om. Of sacrifices, I am the chanting of the holy names, Japa. And of immovable things, I am the Himalayas.
Thank you. So first he says, among the great sages, I am Brigu. Okay, so in Vedic culture, there's different kinds of spiritual leaders. Some are priests, like we talked about, who performed rituals, and sacrifices. But the rishis or the sages, they were a little different. They weren't working for pay or performing rituals for others. Their whole life was just dedicated to spiritual realization. And in that, they lived very simply. They practiced austerity. They focused on understanding the deepest truths of existence. So among these great sages, Brigu was especially respected. Same principle. Among a group of remarkable individuals, the most distinguished one reflects his glory. Then Krishna says, of vibrations, I am the sound Om. So Om is considered the most sacred sound in the Vedic tradition. Most sacred sound in the Vedic tradition because it directly points to the absolute truth. It's like the seed sound from which all spiritual mantras expand. So Krishna is saying that among all the sounds we can make, the one that most directly invokes the divine reality is Om. And then he says something, this might be like one of my favorites that he points out among all this. He says, of all sacrifices, I am the chanting of the holy names. So in ancient times, sacrifices often meant, offering grains or ghee or other substances into a sacred fire. But Krishna is highlighting something deeper here. He's saying the greatest sacrifice is when we offer our consciousness. The greatest sacrifice is when we offer our consciousness. So when we're chanting holy names or we're meditating on the divine, we're taking the most valuable thing we have, our awareness, our attention, and we're directing it towards the supreme. And this offering purifies the heart. It elevates the consciousness. It ultimately awakens love for God. So this is a beautiful place in the Gita that we see right here in the Gita that Krishna tells us of all the sacrifices, chanting of the holy names is the greatest. So what better, testament do you need to see like this is the prescribed sacrifice for this age is chanting of the holy names. This is the greatest sacrifice for this age. Why? Because it's offering our consciousness. It's offering our attention, our awareness. This is such a valuable thing in this day and age. We don't have anything more valuable than our awareness, our attention. Give it to Krishna. And in that, it's all Krishna. It's all Krishna. Then he says, of immovable things, I am the Himalayas. Has anybody been to the Himalayas? I went to the Himalayas a few years ago. It's like we went on like a trek through the Himalayas. I remember waking up in the morning, going out, the sun's just shining, coming up over the mountains, and it's like almost breathtaking. It's just like so grand, so majestic. It's hard to even fathom what something like that isn't until you experience it. That was my experience with the Himalayas. They're massive, they're ancient, they're unmoving. You can't help but feel just awe when you see them, and you feel so small. So Krishna's saying, whenever we encounter something so vast and powerful, we're seeing a reflection of the greatness of the divine source. And in this way, just everything can be spiritual. It's quite beautiful when we choose to see it this way. And this is all in our choice. This is all in our free will. Krishna leaves that up to us. He gives us all these things, and then he gives us this guidebook to tell us, hey, all these things can lead you back to me. But ultimately, it's up to us. It's up to every one of us. We can see something great, someone with great intelligence or leadership, we can decide to be jealous, right? To be envious. We can decide to put our ego right in the center and make that all about us. Or we can see something beautiful like the earth, and we can decide to trash it. If our consciousness is a little bit gloomy, maybe that's what we're doing. Or we can see all of these things that Krishna gives us, all these things in our lives, all of the beautiful intelligence and awe and strength and power. And we can say, wow, that's coming from Krishna. How fortunate am I to just even get to experience, Krishna's majesty through this object or person or landscape. Krishna's trying to help us to see this, trying to help us to expand our consciousness to this, because it connects us back to him, and that's ultimately all that Krishna wants. So he gives us all these opportunities. That's what the Gita is. It gives us all these different ways of which we can come back to him, which we can connect with him. That's his only real desire for us. And we get kind of confused. We think all of these things are to serve me, are to make me more powerful, make me stronger, make me more beautiful. Okay, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but when we see these things as Krishna's, as we see these things as coming directly from Krishna, and we can appreciate and feel connected to Krishna through them, that's really purpose fulfilled. That's really the correct and the most efficient and effective utilization of everything that Krishna gives us. Right? And the thing that's ultimately going to fulfill our hearts. Anything else may just be a quick fix. But ultimately to fill our hearts in a sustainable and complete way, you have to see it in relationship to Krishna. And to the degree that we don't, we'll bring suffering. Okay, should we go to 26? 26. Are you ready, Stella?
Aspataha sarva vikshanam devasinam cha nadradaha gandhavarnam chitradaha siddhanam kapilo munihi. Of all trees, I am the banyan tree. And of the sages among the demigods, I am Narada. Of the Gandharvas, I am Chitrarata. And among perfected beings, I am the sage Kapila.
Thank you. So first he says, among the trees, I'm the banyan tree. So the banyan tree is so remarkable. Has anybody seen a banyan tree? It grows like enormous and it spreads out in every direction. Its branches send roots down to the ground, which then grow into new trunks. So it's like a whole network. And because of this, a single tree can spread and live for just an incredibly long time. It's really quite remarkable. So the banyan tree really represents its strength, longevity, stability. So Krishna's pointing to something extraordinary in nature and see this as a reflection of me. The strength, this longevity, this stability. And then he says, among the sages, I'm Narada. Narada is famous in Vedic tradition as this traveling sage who constantly shares his spiritual wisdom and devotion wherever he goes. And he's constantly inspiring people to turn towards God. So among these spiritual sages, he represents someone especially powerful in spreading this divine knowledge. Then Krishna says, among the Gandharvas, I am Chitrarata. So the Gandharvas are celestial musicians. They're super beautiful and artistic. And among them, Chitraratra is considered the most distinguished. And then finally he says, among the perfected beings, I am the sage Kapila. Kapila is a great philosopher, and fully realized soul who has profound spiritual knowledge, who's taught the spiritual knowledge, and in fact, Kapila is understood to be an incarnation of the Lord himself. So these beautiful opulences, wisdom, beauty, artistic power, spiritual realization, all of this ultimately comes from the same divine source. It's pretty unbelievable, right? And it gives you a whole new way to look at the world. Instead of looking at it from a place of look what I am not, right? In a way that's like self-deprecating, which is a story that a place that many of us get into, right? Like a place of scarcity, right? Like a place of lack. No, we look at it as a place of, wow, look at how incredible God is. Look at how much opulence God has. Let me connect with God. And understanding that God is the infinite. I am just a small little spark. But when I'm connected with God, that's my rightful position. And that's what gives me value. A connection with God. We're off trying to find all this value by ourselves, independently. Oh, if I can only do this, if I can make this difference in this person's life, if I can be really good at this, I have value. That's what we mistakenly think when we see ourselves as independent from God. But when we see ourselves as connected to the whole, when we understand that our actual real identity is to serve the whole, and that the value in that isn't necessarily in the direct result that comes from it, but the state of our consciousness in the offering, then it's like that's what really defines our so-called worth. The state of our consciousness in that service to the whole. Are we filled with love as we're making that offering? Right? Understanding that I'm just a small part of what is infinite. And in that small part, I have a unique identity. But also my purpose here is to serve the whole, not be the whole. It's really remarkable. And it should make life sweeter and lighter and fuller. Because it's a whole lot of exhausting making everything about me. It's a whole lot of exhausting. What do you think, Shakti?
I just want to say one very short, sweet thing is what a relief. What a relief. Thank you, Krishna. Thank you, Krishna. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, this is the gift that Krishna gives us in this knowledge, in this philosophy, in this guidebook of the Gita, to teach us how to live like this, to get out of our own ways, and to serve something greater than ourselves. And this is where true happiness exists, right? Greed never made anybody happy. Greed never has filled the heart. Yet the entire culture, the whole world runs off of it. It's like a gasoline. But really it's just going to blow up. It's going to make everything blow up. It comes from understanding our rightful position and understanding God's rightful position and understanding everything around us is connected to God. And when we really understand that, then we want to use everything around us to serve God because that's its rightful position. And that's our rightful position. But we so easily forget and we get confused. And we start operating off of this me and mine, me mentality. And we suffer. This is our sickness. This is our sickness. Let's do one more. Last one for the day, whenever you're ready. Stella.
Uchisvaram sam asvistam vidimam amrito bhavam erivatim gajendranam naranam cha naradipam. Of horses, know me to be Ucharasvara, produced during the churning of the ocean for nectar. Of lordly elephants, I am Arivata, and among men, I am the monarch.
Okay, so he first talks about this magnificent horse that appeared during this famous churning of the cosmic ocean. This horse was just incredibly powerful and beautiful. Which actually, I heard that somebody once asked Srila Prabhupada what was the best animal, and he said horse. Because horses are just have like symbolize strength, grace, nobility. You know, they're beautiful. They're remarkable, you know, especially impressive. This also, if you're thinking cow, you know, that cow has its own place for sure. But when we think like just really beautiful and just graceful and strong, you know, noble, the horse, according to Prabhupada. And then Krishna says, among elephants, I am Airavata. So this is a majestic elephant who carries King Indra. We talked about the king of heaven. You know, this elephant represents royal strength and just grandeur. And then Krishna says something very practical. He says, among men, I am the monarch. Okay, so a king. You know, a king traditionally holds this tremendous power and influence over society. And when a ruler is wise and righteous, that power can guide an entire society towards harmony and spiritual growth. This was the king's role back in the day. I love reading the Bhagavatam because we actually read about good rulers, like the gold standard, like the way it was intended to be. You know, when the king is actually a servant of the people. It's hard to even imagine that now. We're so corrupt. You know, it's like we don't politicians don't care about us. You know, the people in power, they just want power. It's so corrupt. But back in the day, it was like the kings, they were really noble, you know, they were righteous. It was a sacrifice to be king because they you know they were servants of the people. And many of them in the Bhagavatam, the great kings, they couldn't wait until their rule was over, their term was over, and they could just go out into the forest and practice spiritual life. I mean, that's how much it was really just a sacrifice for them. They were really just doing it as their dharmic responsibility. You know, they not for their own agenda, whatever that be. It's really, really beautiful. But Krishna, you know, this leads to this important insight, you know, that power itself is a manifestation of divine energy. But how that power is used depends on the individual. So it's the power in itself is a manifestation of divine energy. It comes from God. Okay, some leaders use that power to uplift others. Others use that power selfishly and cause a lot of harm. So all of the opulence, though, come from this divine source, but not every person even uses those gifts in a way that brings people closer to the source. So the question for us is, what kinds of excellence do we allow ourselves to be attracted to? You Because we're people, we're naturally going to feel drawn to power, to beauty, to intelligence, to influence. These are all examples of these divine opulences. They all come from God. But at the end of the day, each one of us has a choice. We can become attracted to those manifestations that inspire wisdom and compassion and spiritual growth, or we can become attracted to those that pull us further into ego and materialism. I think of this like there's a person that I dated. I think my last boyfriend, right before I got married. He had a lot of opulences. He was very smart, very like influential, beautiful, but it was so full in ego. It just brought me so low. He used those things to like control, to it just like was not a good it was not a good situation. But those opulences existed, and they're beautiful opulences in themselves, but they weren't used to to they weren't used to inspire compassion and love and acceptance. They were used to serve his own ego. This was just my perspective in relationship with him. Right? So these things we are going to be attracted to them, but be careful which ones you're attracted to. Because what ends up happening is that it affects your consciousness. It affects your journey. They say that we turn into like the five people that we hang out with the most. So even whatever we're really into, whatever rabbit hole you're going down to, you're going down. Is it making you more compassionate? Is it reminding you of Krishna? Is it making you more loving, more accepting? Because we're all going to be attracted to these opulences. But where are they taking you? That's what we all really need to evaluate in our own lives. The same gift, it can be used in so many different ways. Powerful speech, somebody who's a good talker. It could talk you into something that's really brings out the low in you. It's really not in line with your higher truth. So we have to be careful because we have that free will. Krishna gives us that free will because without it, what is love? When we make that decision to go back to Krishna, it has to be out of free will. That's the entire point. Or love can't exist. Right? And Krishna just wants our love. So he puts all these opulences in this world, and it's up to us. We're going to be attracted to them. That's absolute. We're going to be attracted to wisdom, to beauty, to strength, to power. But where are those opulences taking us? Question for all of us today. Where are they taking us? Because Krishna put them in this world to bring us back to him. But ultimately, that's up to us. That's our free will. So this is the deeper teaching here. Not just to notice greatness in the world, but to let the right kinds of greatness elevate our consciousness. And this is a choice. This is a choice to see the sparks and to follow them back to the source. This is why we were talking about these spiritual vacations. It's easy to go on vacation and have this whole set of expectations. I need to see this. I need to do this. And then if those expectations don't pan out, we're disappointed. Right? This is when we're in this just severe enjoyer mentality. But when we go on a trip, in this container with like-minded souls, and really just to experience God, just to grow closer to God, then we see that every opportunity can do that for us. Every beautiful mountain, every waterfall, even if it wasn't the biggest one or the best one or the one we were supposed to go to that day, every conversation can bring us back to God. This is what God's trying to help us to realize, the power in this. Kalachanji. Oh, he's in the waiting room. Why is everybody getting kicked off today? This has happened all day. Anyway, I'm sorry if you got kicked off. I don't know why this is happening. What do you guys think?
I just joined because I'm leaving.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. Welcome back then. Maybe it's just a day that people are popping on and off and it's not. Thank you. Does anybody want to share anything? Anything that's come up for you? Something great in your life that reminds you of God, or that you want to make a conscious effort to see God in more? Or are you thinking of things that are great opulences that have maybe pulled you away from God in your life? We have to be on alert for these things too, because this can happen very easily because we're very attracted to that great power, opulence, beauty. But where is it taking us? We're getting further trapped into this and chasing material allurements that we think are going to make us happy. Or are they bringing us back to God?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, it just makes me think that one of our qualities is our attraction to others' qualities. And
Hmm.
so if we're ever like down, if we're ever down on ourselves or just feeling like mired in, a rajasic or tamasic mode, even the attraction to goodness, the attraction to things in transcendental and in the mode of goodness, is a really wonderful quality that we have. I sometimes have to remind myself of that.
Hmm. Yeah. Really beautiful. Thank you. Hi, Stella and Stella's cat.
Well, I put in the chat that of all the cuteness in kittens. This is Leela Kitty, but
Oh.
yeah, Krishna is Leela Kitty, but and I do see that like I mean, she's been listening to this whole class, and she's at the end of her life, so she's getting it into her ears, into her little kitty brain. So I'm very thankful for that.
Hmm. Aw, thank you. I was thinking a little bit about what would have been mine, and I was thinking like the cuteness in smiles is the cuteness of Prema's smile.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yes. Kelly, I saw your hand. Oh, yeah. Kelly, we'd love to hear from you.
Hi, Krishna. Good morning.
Hi,
Um,
Krishna.
what came to me for the first time, and I've noticed in this practice, I'll hear something numerous times, and one day it'll land. And I was just thinking, and it makes me feel emotional, um, that all Krishna wants is for us to love him. And I relate to that because I just want to be loved too, and I am. And there's really nothing more special and beautiful than being loved. And so to um, to know that that's all that Krishna wants from us. And he doesn't, and my spiritual mentor might say, well, he doesn't need that, but he would love for us to love him. But just at the core that he just wants us to love him. Like that's so beautiful and so simple. I'm
Mm.
really appreciating it.
Yeah, thank you. And just to think how many different ways he gives us. I mean, he just really gives us a lifesaver, like in every different way. It's like, whatever you're doing, I give you a way to come back to me. And I love what you said too. It's not out of lack. Krishna's complete. I mean, sometimes we need things out of lack, and that's okay because we're finite. That should actually make us we can appreciate that we're finite in that. But Krishna's complete. God is complete. He needs nothing, but he wants our love. It's really quite beautiful. We've probably been in relationships where that feel kind of driven off that scarcity mentality. Like there's a lot of lack, like fear, that's where the need for love comes from. Or, then you kind of evolve, you get into healthier relationships where people are really encouraging you to be you and just appreciating you for who you are. And, this is because they're complete themselves to some extent. They don't need you to be something for them to feel something about that. It's like that's what we call a healthier relationship. But the ultimate relationship with God, I mean, God actually is complete. God is fully complete. And what that must feel like to really have that loving reciprocal relationship with him that he's offering us, that's available. I mean, he's giving us every single opportunity. It's like the next time that you go outside and you feel the sunlight on your skin, know that that's God's warmth. Right? Think of God, remember God, and that will bring you closer to God. It's amazing. It's amazing. Thank you, Kelly. It's really nice hearing from you today. Anybody else? Aaron, we haven't heard from you today. Do you have any reflections for us today? Shraddhanjali just
Hare
has
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Sorry, my morning's a little off from the change of the hour.
Sure.
Yeah, going through all of these with you and in this association, because when I typically read or have read this section before, I just kind of breeze through it because a lot of it does not track for me. I don't know what half the words are or half the references are. So it's just really nice to even get like a small basic understanding of, okay, this is a great sage. Okay, this is, I know there's some of that in the verses, but I think it's like really easy to just like skim over it, and it's really nice to like sit with it a little deeper. I think it's interesting because I feel like I think about Krishna a lot more in uh like when I like stub my toe, or like like things that are like me rushing or me multitasking or me doing like a lot. I remember like being on a yoga retreat once, and you guys were talking about a pilgrimage and retreats earlier. And I was like walking through the woods feeling like super zen, super like, just like good and in touch with nature. And then like a twig like smacked me in the face. And I was like, oh yeah. like, like this is like a nice little reality check. And I feel like that to me is like something I think about that's like a reminder of Krishna in my life, like much more in the like hopefully gentle, but kind of wake up call type realm. And then I just think of how he's such a mischievous one. So but it's really good to think about and meditate on all of these opulences too. I am curious about the japa one though, because he's not in Kali Yuga, right? When he's speaking this.
Yeah.
But I mean, I know it's like technically eternally happening and in the spiritual world and everything, but I was just I don't know, that it just made me pause and question a little bit of why he didn't mention I can't remember the sacrifice for Dwarpa Yuga, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. It is there's different recommended sacrifices for each age. This is the age of Kali, and the chanting of the holy names is the recommended sacrifice. And that in itself is just so much mercy from Krishna, because this is such an accessible way. Like anybody and everybody can do it. It's completely accessible. And as we're seeing here in the Gita, it's the most powerful. So, just different sacrifices were recommended at different ages, and they were difficult. It was very difficult to do some of these sacrifices. Some, to sit in meditation. Meditation was one. Deity worship was one. Ritual sacrifices, just different things like this. But this age, it recommends japa, and it's so accessible, but it's also the most powerful. It's the most devotional. It's the most, it creates that emotional intimacy. So yeah, it's a good thing to know that he's telling us here in the Gita that japa is the most powerful, but it wasn't necessarily the recommended way in every age. This is a gift that we have in this age. Yeah, thanks. Really nice point. Yeah. Okay, my friend. Oh my gosh, I didn't even notice the time. Wow. We should probably wrap this up. Thank you all so much for coming. It's so great to be here with you all. And thanks for being so sincere and showing up, showing the work, showing up and doing the work because it's not always easy. Thank you all. I'll see you on Thursday.